This is my 2014 335, and last time we discussed the best exhaust for this car. But today, we're discussing what no one wants to discuss, which is the maintenance and ownership cost of one of these after 2.5 years of ownership. I have it in here, I have a lot in here, and yeah, it's not pretty. So I took it upon myself to add up and calculate the approximate, with like pretty close, ownership cost of this car over 2.5 years. I accounted everything from basic maintenance to repairs, both common and uncommon, gas, everything just short of insurance, because I'm gonna keep that information to myself. But yeah, I added it up and it's in here. So today we find out how much does one of these cost after 2 years. But before we get to numbers, let's talk a little bit about this car. I bought this 2.5 years ago when I was 18 years old, after I had just gotten a promotion and I thought I could afford it. And it's been a great car. I absolutely love this car. It has never once left me stranded. I feel that's important to say. This car has never left me stranded. It's always at least gotten me home. And whenever there has been a problem, I honestly don't think it's been that bad. There's been one repair on this car that I'm not happy I had to do. I felt it was kind of strange, but we'll get into that. When I bought this car, the previous owner was an older lady who had it absolutely meticulously maintained at the dealer. And so when I bought this car, it was absolutely mint perfect at 100,000 kilometers. I live in Canada, so 100,000 kilometers. I bought this car and I've had it for 2.5 years. It's now at 150,000 kilometers. So in 2.5 years, I've put on 50,000 kilometers. So that's the basics of this car and the story behind it. Let's get into the maintenance. In this video, all the prices will be listed in Canadian dollars because I live in Canada and I pay Canadian prices for these things. So I will list everything in a Canadian price, and then I will convert it to American for all the American viewers, so it's easier for you to watch the video and so you understand how much one of these costs in American dollars too. So I'll list everything in Canadian, but then I'll translate it to American. I feel it's important to mention that if you drive far for work, I'm not sure if you can justify getting one of these cars. See, I only drive like 10 minutes to work, and I think that has had a huge impact on the lack of cost that it has been for me to own this car. Because, you know, gas to get 10 minutes away from my house is not that much, and of course the wear and tear on the car is lessened as well. If I was driving an hour and a half, or different distances every day to work like a tradesman, I don't know if I could justify owning this car. The gas cost would be astronomical, and the maintenance cost would also rise as well. Naturally, you're putting more miles on the car in a shorter amount of time. Your maintenance cost is going to go up, and the car is going to be high miles in no time. So if you travel a lot for work, if you're going an hour and a half every day all around for work, I don't know if you should buy one of these cars. It will add quite a bit to the ownership cost of one of these if you choose to get one instead of a more reliable car like a Toyota. All right, let's get into this. So, basic maintenance. Oil change, I do 3 times a year. Spark plugs, I've done once, and I did all 6. And then the ignition coils, I've replaced 3 so far with OEM replacements. The spark plugs, I did like a step colder, the NGK ones that most of the BMW guys run. But the coils, I just did the OEM replacements, and I've done 3 so far. Maintenance. The big thing I've done is the valve cover gasket. That was like a couple hours worth of job. I had my dad and my friend helping me, and we got it done in a couple hours, and the car hasn't had a problem since. It was a somewhat complex job, but not too bad. And that's done and dusted, because what happened was it started to drip onto the downpipe and it would smoke. So I'd get smoke coming out of my engine bay. So obviously I had to fix that. So yeah, valve cover gasket. I've done both front control arms on both sides. So done both front control arms. When I did that, the front axle has to come out, or not out all the way, but the bolt has to come out. So I've replaced both axle bolts. Okay, moving on from the control arms and axle bolt, we're gonna talk about this next, because this is a repair but I kind of got lucky. So let me explain. Winter of last year, I ordered the coilovers for this car. I was going to install them in spring. Before I had a chance to install them, my stock coil spring, the stock one, snapped. So yeah, I had to replace the suspension because the stock suspension snapped, and luckily I had the coilovers on deck to do it. But if you didn't have coilovers, that'd be an unexpected expense out of your pocket. Now my coilovers were $1,500, so if you want, you can add that to the cost of this maintenance, because if I didn't happen to have the coilovers already, I would have had to buy that for this car, and I would have been stranded. The car would have been stuck in the driveway. And I broke the coil spring in the driveway. When I left my driveway and there's like a little bump, that's when the coil spring broke. So you can count that as maintenance if you want, and I think I might, because that is an unexpected maintenance cost if you didn't have coilovers laying around like I did. So that's kind of one thing that I was looking forward to mentioning here to see what people think of that is, yeah, my stock coil spring snapped, and luckily I had the coilovers on deck to replace it, so I was only down and out like a day. But yeah, pretty crazy that the stock spring snapped. Moving on from there is the one repair on this car that I'm not happy I had to do. And it was expensive, and we'll talk about it when we get into the financial side of this, when I'm back at my desk. And that is the fuel rail. I had to replace the fuel rail on this car, and that was a repair I was not expecting to do, and we're going to get into the details of it. The job itself is incredibly simple. It took me and my dad less than an hour, but I had to buy the fuel rail. There's no aftermarket support for it, and it was expensive, and it shouldn't have had to have been done. Everyone I talked to who owned N55, N20, B58, whatever you want, they're all like, yeah, that's unheard of. I don't know why you had to do the fuel rail. What happened was the compression nuts on the fuel rail started to crack. So I'm like, I gotta replace this. Like, this is literally a fire hazard if it starts to leak. And luckily it never leaked, but I had to replace it, and it wasn't cheap. So we're gonna talk about it. Now let's talk about some repairs that I haven't done yet, but I have to do. And that's, I have to do some rust repair. So that's gonna be done this winter. And then I have to do the oil filter housing gasket as well, and I have to do it sooner than later. So I'm not gonna count those on this paper just yet, just because I haven't done them yet, but they will have to get done soon. Now that we're back at my desk, let's discuss money. All the labor that has been done to my car has been free. It's been done by me, my friend, and my dad. So the labor cost on all these things is $0. My oil changes I do 3 times a year, 120 bucks each, 360 bucks per year. Spark plugs, I've replaced all 6 once. It was $180. The ignition coils, I've replaced 3 at $50. The valve cover gasket was $50. The control arms were $160 each, and the axle bolts were $30 each. The fuel rail was $1,200. Yeah, I wasn't happy about that. Now, the suspension snapping, of course, is a bit of a weird thing because I had already spent the money on the coilovers, so my car was only down for a day, and it was effectively no cost to me because I had bought the coilovers. But if you were in the same situation and you didn't happen to have purchased coilovers already, that's $1,500 out of your pocket. So you can account that if you want to. That being said, let's add it all up. Okay, oil changes so far have cost me $900 in 2.5 years of ownership. The repairs have been $1,730 in 2.5 years of ownership. If you want to, you can count the cost of the coilovers to that because of the unexpected suspension snapping. So $900 plus $1,730 is my oil change and repairs. Let's talk gas. Like I said, I fill up about once a week because I don't drive far to work. I get around 500 kilometers from a tank, which is not great because of the stage 2 tune, so my gas mileage isn't good. It costs about $90 Canadian to fill the tank from empty. I live in Southern Ontario. And so that means it's $360 per month or $4,320 per year to keep my car filled with gas. That means so far in 2.5 years of ownership, I've spent about $10,800 on gas. Yeah, I'm not happy. So now we get to the final number. The cost for gas and repairs and maintenance over the last 2.5 years adds up to $13,430. That's $5,372 per year, or $448 per month on gas, repairs, and maintenance. So there it is. There's the cost of gas, repairs, and maintenance to own a 335. So, after all that begs the question, should you get a 335? And the answer is yes, of course you should, if you get the right one. The key, if you want to own one of these cars, is you have to get the right one. See one red flag and run when you go to look at one of these to possibly buy it. If you see something that you don't like, don't buy the car. I bought this one because it was literally perfect when I bought it. I looked over it and it was just immaculate. There was not a single issue and everything was perfectly maintained and well taken care of. So that's why I bought this car, and that's what you should look for if you go to buy one of these. Now, if you're thinking of getting a 335, again, just make sure it's the right one, and I say go for it. They're fantastic cars. I've had a ton of fun over the last 2.5 years. I'd say it's totally worth the cost of ownership because I've met so many great people and I've learned so many things about these cars and other cars, and I'm so motivated to keep going and keep building this car and make it something really special. So thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more. I'm going to be adding a ton to the build this winter, and we're only about a month away from winter, which, I mean, it's kind of sad, but it'll let me build the car, so it's okay. So thank you for watching and have a good day.